I hope everybody has a glass, by the way, because we're going to have a little toast after I say a couple of words of welcome. So if you don't have a glass yet, in fact, I don't have one, so if somebody wants me to bring me one, that would be great. And I'd just like to say a few words. Well, first of all, good evening, welcome readers, scholars, and aficionados. Welcome to London, and particularly to Fordham, London. For those who may not know me yet, my name is Angela Alaimo O'Donnell, and I'm the Associate Director of the Curran Center for American Catholic Studies at Fordham University in New York City, the sponsor of this year's International Flannery O'Connor Conference, which we have called Flannery Abroad. The Curran Center's mission, among other endeavors, is to celebrate the Catholic imagination in the world, to celebrate writers and artists whose work has been shaped by Catholic culture and teaching, and which bears the indelible mark of that powerful shaping tradition, for better and for worse. This includes the whole range of artists, embracing saints and sinners alike, from John of the Cross to James Joyce, from Michelangelo to Robert Mapplethorpe, from Salieri to Sinatra, and everybody in between. And I think that includes some of us in this room. We take as our motto to describe the inheritance of the Catholic imagination, Joyce's acronym in Finnegan's Wake to describe the Catholic Church, HCE, here comes everybody. And among the brightest stars of that great cloud of witnesses that are everybody is, of course, Flannery O'Connor. Yet O'Connor is not just a capital C Catholic writer, she is a small c Catholic writer. Her peculiar genius transcends any identity one might try to impose on her. A woman writer, a Georgia writer, a Gothic writer, a Southern writer, an American writer, a 20th century writer. While all of these terms are accurate descriptors, none of them captures the fullness of O'Connor. When you try to take a snapshot of her, she somehow escapes the camera, seems to be fleeing out from the frame. Yet there are a few things that we can definitively say about O'Connor. For one thing, we know that O'Connor did not like to travel. Upon her return from her enforced pilgrimage to Lourdes and Rome, among other storied cities, we will all remember her quip, "We went to Europe and I lived through it, but my capacity for staying at home has now been perfected, sealed, and is going to last me the rest of my life." We also know that O'Connor had a healthy distrust of cities in any country, including her own. She lived in Manhattan briefly, as many of you will remember, at the corner of 108th and Broadway, and she was very happy to escape it and go to live with the Fitzgeralds in the wilds of Connecticut. In her last story, Judgment Day, you may recall, old T.C. Tanner, living in New York City, utterly alien and alienated, writes a note to his African-American companion at home in Georgia, Coleman, who he left behind to come and live with his daughter. And he writes in large letters on this note, "Stay where you are. Don't let them talk you into coming up here. It's no kind of place." Flannery had no use for New York and no use for Rome, and we can only assume that she would have no use for London. Yet here we are, and here she is. I hope you noticed the beautiful cake that Nikki had made for us. In that great tradition of the previous International Flannery O'Connor conferences, we have taken Flannery abroad, this time in honor of her 100th birthday to celebrate her legacy to us. Previous conferences, and some of you may have been at those conferences, you can raise your hand if you were. There was one in Rome, there was one in Dublin, there was one in Sevilla several years ago, and also in Toronto. I have to add that the Toronto one actually couldn't happen in Toronto because of COVID, but that did not stop us. We had it online, and so, in fact, the theme of that conference was no kind of place. We seem to keep coming back to that. So this particular conference, the fifth one, is a landmark event as it gives us the chance to explore and celebrate Flannery's remarkable legacy and her continually growing reputation as one of the premier writers of the 20th century. O'Connor, long revered as a great American writer, is increasingly recognized by readers and scholars around the world as a great writer, period. She is, as ever, evading the snapshot, escaping the frame. So tonight I want to thank the 49 writers and scholars who have made their way to London tonight to offer presentations for the next 3 days. Those of you who are presenting, you want to just raise your hand. Okay, great, thank you all. And help us to see O'Connor from a rich and variety of different vantage points. Our presenters hail from countries as various and far-flung as Spain, Italy, Brazil, Japan, Canada, the US, and the UK. Did I forget anybody? I hope I didn't forget anybody. Any other places? I'm sorry? I wish I heard what you said. Texas. Oh, Texas is another country. So many of these presentations will illuminate the cross currents between O'Connor's writing and the work of writers, musicians, artists, theologians, and philosophers from nations and cultures other than her own. Just a cursory glance at the conference program, which I hope you've had a chance to take a look at, suggests how profoundly Flannery was inspired by the great writers and artists who came before her, as well as those who were her contemporaries. We will hear presentations on Flannery and Graham Greene, Flannery and Jacques Maritain, Flannery and Muriel Spark, Flannery and Charles Williams, Flannery and Edith Stein, among others. In addition, the presentations demonstrate O'Connor's shaping presence and influence on international artists in our own time. We will hear about the ways in which O'Connor has inspired Bono, Nick Cave, Lucinda Williams, Ethan Hawke, and Martin McDonough, among others. The fact that O'Connor's work continues to speak to readers, writers, and artists now, in 2025, 100 years after her birth and 61 years after her death, is a testament to the timeless relevance of her writing and the energy of her genius. In her essay, The Regional Writer, O'Connor writes of, quote, the peculiar crossroads where time and place and eternity somehow meet. This is the space wherein O'Connor's stories unfold, mapping terrain that is recognizable to us as rural Georgia in the American South in the mid-20th century, but is simultaneously the mythic realm wherein fables and parables are set, the realm within which we watch the characters of every man and every woman working out their salvation in fear and trembling. As with all great fiction, O'Connor's stories are both particular and universal, grounded in the ordinary, mundane world and gesturing towards the unseen world beyond us, encompassing both the human and the divine, the ridiculous and the sublime. It is an accidental and yet a poetic fact, some of us were just talking about Pope Francis, that Flannery O'Connor's centenary coincides with the death of Pope Francis, who died on April 21st, 2025. He is a pope that I think she would have loved. In an address the Pope wrote and delivered to an audience of writers in May of 2023, where I was fortunate to be present along with several other people in this room, this most literary of popes spoke of the supreme importance of writers and their sacred calling, quote, as poets, storytellers, filmmakers, and artists to give life, flesh, and verbal expression to all that humanity experiences, feels, dreams, and endures. In attempting to describe the restless, uncontainable energy of artistic genius, he uses the charming term superabundant, a word that he also uses to describe the experience of the divine. Francis likens the imagination to, quote, a continually overflowing basin, a force that cannot be tamed, that cannot be contained or framed or stuck in a box any more than the God of the universe can. I cannot think of a more perfect metaphor to describe the imagination of Flannery O'Connor, which refuses to be contained, but rather overflows and makes itself manifest to readers in unexpectedly wild and wonderful ways, from the songs of U2 and Bruce Springsteen and Sufjan Stevens and Colin Cutler, to the films of Ethan Hawke and Martin McDonough and Mark Bosco, to the stage plays of Karen Coonrod, who will be joining us on Saturday, to the many, many writers whom she has served as mentor and muse, friend and philosopher and guide, myself included. Ever ancient and ever new, to quote St. Augustine, one of the saints that most influenced O'Connor's imagination, Flannery's art has spoken to us for 73 years and more, continually begetting and inspiring more art and calling to us across languages and culture, time and eternity. So thank you all for joining us for Flannery Abroad. When we first started planning this conference, you know, it's kind of like the old, if you build it, they will come. It's like, if we set up a conference in London, will they come? And yes, thank you, they did. This is, we hope, going to be 3 days of conversation, collegiality, and hospitality here in the heart of London, the birthplace, proving ground, and resting place of many of the greatest writers in the English language. In addition to the 45 presenters and panel members who are so generously contributing expertise and passion for O'Connor's work, I'd like to thank our 4 keynote speakers for their honored presence at this centenary celebration, all of whom are here this evening: Vincent Cunningham, Bruce Gentry, Mary Gordon, who will be speaking tonight, and Phil Clyde. Somebody on the thing that used to be called Twitter, but is now weirdly called X, said, "That is an all-star lineup." And I said, yes, it is. I would like to thank all the people who have worked tirelessly for this past year and a half preparing the way for this conference, especially the Curran Center's academic administrator, Maria Terzulli, who couldn't be with us this evening, but anybody who knows the Curran Center knows Maria, and Fordham London's director and director of operations, Matthew Holland, and Nikki Blake, who you just heard from this evening. I'd also like to thank the co-sponsoring institutions, Georgetown University, Loyola Chicago's Hank Center, and the Mary Flannery O'Connor Trust, especially the trust. Without their help, this would not have happened. And most of all, I'd like to offer my profound thanks to my colleagues and fellow members of the International Flannery O'Connor Conference Committee. If you guys would raise your hands: Mark Bosco. Michael Murphy is not here, but Michael, we're talking about you, so your ears are burning. Jessica Schnapp, where's Jessica? Wonderful. And Susan Srigley, who has been enormously helpful. In fact, many of you, your point of contact has been Susan, and we are so grateful for that. So thank you. I have to say that this collaboration and your superabundant imaginations and energies, to borrow Pope Francis's terms, in helping to conceive and to craft this conference have made it the rich and broad and wonderful gathering that it is bound to be. You can't imagine the Zoom meetings, the email exchanges, the panic sessions, all of that. But it's paid off, I think. So now, the last thing I'd like to do is to conclude my remarks with a poem and a birthday toast to Flannery. So I hope everybody has their glass of wine in hand. As some of you are aware, I created a poetry collection a couple of years ago called Andalusian Hours, which features 101 persona poems that channel the voice of Flannery O'Connor. Actually, one poem, the last one, is in my voice, in which I apologize. But the other 100 are in Flannery's voice. And usually the sonnets, they're all sonnets, they begin with an epigraph from Flannery's letters or her essays or her stories, and continues in her voice. And of course, as we know, Flannery says the darndest things, so it was great fun finding these epigraphs. So I'd like to read one of these poems for her birthday. It's called, actually, Flannery's Birthday. And the epigraph comes from her letter to Betty Hester, April 2nd, 1960, in which she says, "Well, I thanks you for my birthday message. I am 35 years old and still have all my teeth. Little did I know I'd have just 4 more. Birthdays never meant that much to me until I stopped having them. Now they seem a sweetness every humanoid should savor. A day for cake and contrition for all the things you'd done and didn't get and might not ever get to do, given the call we all get out of this party that we call life. The knife I use to cut my cake is sharp, like my eye and like my pen. My story's rife with folks who need a light to see themselves by. Maybe candlelight is best, a birthday song, reminding us all we won't be here very long." And on that dark, but also weirdly happy note, happy birthday, Flannery. Thank you for 100 years of your dark, weird, wonderful companionship, and cheers. Cheers. And now, as my Sicilian grandmother used to say, mangia.